Good Thursday afternoon, man.
It is a good Thursday afternoon. I'm just glad it's not raining.
Yeah, no, sun's out. At least over here it is.
Yeah, it's a little cold, but
Yeah,
it's all good. I'd rather be cold and sunshiny than rainy and warm.
any day.
Any day, that's right. So man, we're going to talk about reviews. So let's have this conversation because I've heard this several times. My gosh, y'all talk about reviews all the time. Why do y'all talk about reviews so much?
Well, we've noticed too that when we talk about reviews, they're usually the most engaged audiences, meaning the most comments, the most people watching, the most reruns, or views later after the
Hmm.
fact. So we know that it matters to business owners. It's
Oh yeah.
one of the visceral things that you really feel it when somebody leaves you a review, good or bad. It's and everybody has had the experience of getting a bad review, and how to respond to that is important to them. They want to make sure they're doing it right, that they're capitalizing on, that they're making lemonade out of the lemons they've been handed, basically,
Sure.
and doing everything they can.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And I think there are some things that you can do that are effective, and then there's other things that you can do that exacerbate the problems. So I really want to kind of get to all that. And then I want to talk a little bit too about AI's participation in reviews, because I know that that's something that is pretty new, that can happen, but it's all good.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So here we go. We're going to walk down this road. Immediate effects of negative reviews. Well, I can tell you one of the immediate effects is the owner goes, "What?"
Exactly. It usually is a I mean, it'll ruin a positive, it'll ruin a good day. Let's
Yeah.
just put it that way. When you get a negative review, it for most every business owner I know, there's going to be some butt hurt, kind of, a little bit of a moment there, and depending on how bad it is, depending on who it is, I mean, it may last all day, or it may just be until lunch, but
Yeah.
it'll sting a little.
It's like they said, "What about my baby?" What?
Yeah,
I mean, that's really the thing, and I get that. I mean, I'm the same way, so I'm
me
not.
too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just nobody likes a negative review at all. And then it's like, well, who did it? Who did it? Who can I blame for that dadgum thing? Who can I turn my wrath on, and spew and just get it? Yeah, yeah. And those are really it's emotional. It's the emotion.
Yes.
I mean,
Yep.
that really is the immediate effects, and the person that's involved, if it's a technician, if it's person at the office, whatever, they get emotional too. Sometimes it's defensiveness. I mean, it's just all these emotions come up, and you're just having to deal with it, you know. And nobody likes to deal with things. And here's the other thing. My wife said something to me just recently. She said, I've realized you put out a lot of fires that you don't start." And I thought, you know what? That's true, but that's also true about negative reviews. Owners sometimes put out a lot of fires that they don't start. So, it goes back to training, goes back to a lot of other things of what caused it. Sometimes it's just pure negligence, and you got to kind of deal with that. But, I think it really is interesting, all those effects from that. So, I have a lot of empathy for business owners who get negative reviews because it's tough.
Yeah, you're not going to make it unscathed through business and not get one or two, but they can be instructive. But the immediate effect, beside the shock that somebody could possibly criticize my baby, business owner response, there's a response from the public as well,
Mhm,
which is it can immediately kind of shake people's trust. It
mhm.
can impact some of the just rankings. I mean, in terms of like the signals that Google is paying attention to, it could damage that as well. So not responding or just letting it ride, walking away and saying, so what, is not an option. I mean, dealing with them has to be part of, what the next steps look like.
So let's talk about the strategies to respond. My first strategy is to breathe.
Yeah.
Seriously, is to say, okay, what is this? What are we really talking about? It's try to separate yourself from the emotion. Feel the emotion. That's fine. You feel it, you deal with it, but then sit back and say, okay, what is this person really saying? Kind of, if you can do it in a very non-emotional way and kind of go through the review and try to find out, how does that person feel? How are they feeling? How did we potentially make them feel? What can I do to make them feel otherwise? I mean, there's some real strategies before you ever respond to try to get to the bottom of things, to try to get and figure out what you really need to do, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. It is best to approach this when you have a clear head and you've stepped away and allowed the emotions to subside. That's kind of where you start.
Yeah. So the next thing, and we're going to go through like the steps of it, but the one thing I do want to say is, even when you back away from it, take the emotion out, write down what you want to respond, and have somebody else look at it. I think that's really, really important, because when you have somebody else look at it that's more clear-eyed, clear-minded, they may say, it's a little snarky, or, wow, that's, is this really what you want to say? Those kind of gotcha things. So I think that's something else, even as you go through all the steps, to make sure somebody reviews it before you go. And then we have clients that say, y'all deal with it. And so we deal with it, which means getting to the bottom of it, figuring out, going through the motions that I just talked about. So, and that's okay. But I think there's some really, really important steps that you just have to take. And the first one is really acknowledging very quickly.
Yeah, basically, and it doesn't have to be acknowledgement in the sense of, you're right, we're so sorry. It just needs to be, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, or thank you so much for the opportunity to, to learn more about your service experience with us. Right. That's all it needs to be. That acknowledges the person for taking the time to provide that feedback, and you're not commenting on the feedback yet or anything else. You're just simply acknowledging that you've received it and that you're grateful for it.
Yeah. I think the other thing you can do is just say, I need to investigate this a little further and find out, what's going on, and I will get back to you.
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
that you give them, so that you let them know that you have heard them, they've been heard, and you need to figure out what's going on, with all the different things, and you'll respond back to them. So I think that's really important too. The other thing is a personalized response. So, one of the things I'll tell you, I really like this, because so many times I see people going, well, we, the company, we the this, we the that, and it depersonalizes things. So if you can come in and personalize it and say, oh my gosh, thank you so much, Mr. Smith. And I'm not talking about personalize it to me, but I'm just saying we don't say the customer's name. Thank you, Carter, so much for giving us that great review, or thank you, Carter, so much for getting in touch with us. I see that you've had an issue. Give me a day or two to dig into it, and I will get back to you. Something in those sense that you're responding on a personal level. People love to hear their names.
Yes.
Yeah.
And but there's I think a fine line here, and I'm not disagreeing, but we talk about being personalized or being specific about the things that that happened that they're describing. You don't want to get into a situation where you're doing a tit for tat like accounting of everything that they said, because that can come off as very defensive. Thank you for your response. We appreciate it. First of all, this. And second of all, you said this, but we think this. And, you don't want to get into trading back and forth on like who's right about all of the things. That's not what we're talking about in a personalized response.
No, I'm talking about more, hey, Carter, my name's Taylor. I'm one of the owners of the company. I've seen this review. I need to dig into it a little bit, find out what's going on, and I'll get back to you. But the personalization I'm talking about is you're like a person to a person.
Yes, right.
You're not making judgments. You're not overstepping. You're not doing any of those things. You're just making a personal connection and making sure that other person understands they have been heard. That's a really big deal. That's something I've been reading a lot about, that one of the biggest frustrations for kids is they don't feel like they've been heard. They don't think their parents really listen to them, and I will tell you, I think that's a big problem in just communication, period, that we spend so much time thinking about what we're going to say, to defend our whatevers, that we don't take the time to really stop and hear and listen to what the other person is actually saying and ask questions.
Or it's a numbers game where you're like, okay, so, you and about 5 other people this week, you've all got problems with us. Well, I can't make everybody happy. And, that kind of a response where you're not really acknowledging, what's going on. And we're not talking about acknowledging wrongdoing or guilt or anything else. It's just making sure that the person is heard. I heard somebody say this the other day, and this is a personal relationship they were talking about, but they said, I just wish that this person just once, I don't want them to apologize. They're great at over the top apologies. But I still don't feel like they even heard what my original gripe was. The apology was so generic and so blanket cover everything, kind of apology. Just once, I would like for that person to acknowledge what it was that I said and what it is that I'm trying to tell them to, ask them to stop doing. And they don't listen. They're not acknowledging me. So that's, I think, sometimes more important than the actual apology itself is to just feel like, okay, well, at least I've been heard.
Yes. And hey, guys, if you could give us a thumbs up, a heart, that would be great. We love that. Apparently the algorithms love it. So, we're gonna beg you for those things. As a personalized response from Taylor and Carter to you, please. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, we got one. See, it worked. Thanks, Terry. Thank you so much. Talking about apologies, sometimes it really is necessary. I mean, sometimes you screw up. I think one of the biggest things, and I'm going to say this in my generation, I'm not saying it's in all generations, but in my generation, I think one of the hardest things for men to do is to say, I was wrong. And I was talking to my dad one day, and he made a comment. He said, I was raised that I'm supposed to solve everything. And he said, I went through my life thinking that I was supposed to solve everything. And this was after he and my mom divorced. And I said, well, part of your problem is you couldn't solve mother's problems. And you tried, and all you did was frustrate the heck out of her. And he said, yeah, I think I've realized that now. But part of it is in raising. Men are raised to be, in different generations, different things, but we're supposed to have all the answers, and, we don't. And we're supposed to do everything right, and we don't. And so it's hard sometimes for us to say we were wrong. But it's a good practice, because it takes a lot of pressure off.
Talk about, humility is a part of real masculinity. Humility is just a part of being a human being. And I think when we walk in life in humility, people respond to that. People, will will work with us because they don't sense that we're too big for our britches, so to speak. My
Right.
my dad used to say, if you're a leader, then you better get used to the taste of crow because you're going to eat it pretty frequently, and that has been true.
Yeah. No, and I would agree with that. And learning to enjoy the taste is
Yeah,
part of also being a leader, because it's like, oh, okay, and learning from that,
yeah,
I think is really good. So, and that doesn't mean that you apologize when you don't feel like it's your fault, but it does. What I find most of the time in relationships of any kind, whether it's a client, customer, whether it's you and me, my wife and I, there's two things that happen here. Number one, it becomes adversarial because we don't stop and realize we're both on the same side. And that's the first thing,
mm,
is you can understand that you're both on the same side. They want it fixed, you want it fixed. They want it fixed right, and you want it fixed right. You're going in the same direction. So that's number one. And the second thing is to pause before you speak. Just pause a minute before you make some stupid comment off the cuff. I am so guilty of that because I can be snarky. I know people who they don't live with me and aren't around me a lot. But you and my wife Marilyn can both know I can be really snarky at times, and so I do it in fun. But not everybody takes it as fun, and so to pause, especially in the right, if you do that in the wrong way, you get in trouble. So it's just pausing and just making sure that you realize you're on the same side, and let's find a solution. So I
yeah.
think it's important.
And the when you get to the let's find a solution part, I mean, you're basically saying, you know, I want to make it right, and
Yeah.
I want the solution to be, something that you can live with and that I can live with, and that you feel like, really was a good resolution to the issue. But sometimes you don't know what that's going to be, right? You may not know how badly that person was affected in their life. You may just look at it as, I mean, come on, it was a $250 sweep, and they're going on and on and on like I just kidnapped their fifth grader and won't give him back. This is out of it doesn't match the circumstances here. This person is reacting in a way that but you may not understand everything that's going on in their world at that time, and the nature of what happened may have affected them greater than the value of the service that you placed on it monetarily. So, sometimes it's important to ask the question, what what would be the best outcome here for you? What would you like for us to do to make this right? And to start, you know, with a baseline of understanding what it is that they need from you in order to feel like this was handled right. And it could be that you need to compromise on that, and that you need to come back and say, well, I can't do all of that, but what I can do is this. Would that be okay? Working toward a resolution, right? And then making that offer to say, okay, this is what we're going to do.
And sometimes they'll tell you, I just want to sever the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if they think it's so egregious, then sometimes you have to let people go, and that's okay too. I mean, just if mistakes are made, you have to acknowledge it, and you just have to do that. So, I think that's really true, and encourage a follow up. I like this. Let's follow up. Let's circle back. Let's make sure everything is working. Let's make sure everything is going like we all want it to. Let's do the thing. So to follow up, to have those kind of things, I think are real important too.
I think that's just customer service 101. I
Yeah.
mean, the moment that the first thing happens that causes your customer to say, this is not the experience that I was expecting, you're
Mhm.
now under a magnifying glass. And
Yeah.
every other thing that happens in the relationship is going to be examined now from a place of, I'm suspicious about this company, or this transaction or this interaction. And I'm watching everything like a hawk, and so And you all know what that's like. You've all been in that situation where one misstep and now you're getting calls every day, or the person is just micromanaging and all up in your grill because their trust has been violated, and they're trying to gain it back, or they're trying to at least make sure they don't get screwed more than they feel like they might. Mm-hmm. And encouraging follow-up is just part of what's got to happen, right?
Yeah.
You are indicating to them, look, not only are we going to do the right thing, but we're going to make sure that that we did the right thing, and we're going to make sure you are good with what we've done, and that you agree that we did the right thing.
No, I think that's very, very true. I just think it's a great and a must thing to do. And so let's talk about some common mistakes. So the first, to me, the common mistake is to answer too quickly. And when I mean answer too quickly, because we said before, quick acknowledgement. That's not the answer. The acknowledgement is, I got it. I heard you. Let me take a moment, see if I can figure out exactly what's going on, and I will get back to you. This enables you when you can step back and kind of deflate your emotions and take that down a step to where you can really analyze what's going on, the situation. I think that to me is when you actually are answering the issue. And so it's after the fact. And, if you need a day or two, if you're a hothead, and I'm a bit of a hothead, sometimes I need more than a day. I need more than a few minutes. I like to say, hey, let me circle back with this. Let me figure it out. It may take me a couple of days and I'll get back with you. And I do that because I need to figure out my emotions of it. I need to figure out really what's going on. And so I can just pull myself down to where I can make better decisions.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
So I think that's a big common mistake. I think the other mistake to avoid is not dealing with it. To just throw up your hands and say, yeah, whatever. And I've seen people do that. They don't deal with the good ones. They don't deal with the bad ones. They're just like, yeah, they come in and, oh, well, whatever. And I think that's a mistake. So, we've said this before. You need to be answering your negative reviews. You need to be answering your positive reviews. That's just, marketing 101. Those reviews are very important. People read them. They go through them. We've had people that have had negative reviews that we have coached through them. And from how they answered the review, they got work. That people came back to them and said, I chose your company because you were so gracious in the way that you answered the reviews and solved the problems. So it can be a way to get new business. And people a lot of times don't believe me, but it works.
Oh, there's every time we talk about this in classes and the comments come in of, yeah, it happened to me. One of the biggest jobs I ever got was because somebody read the response to one of my negative reviews, and they thought that it was brilliant how I handled it, and they decided that's the kind of person I want to work with.
And that's one of the way of transforming a negative review that somebody's given to you into a positive for your company. But another way of transforming just the negative review you get into positive is once it's resolved and they're happy that it's resolved, go back and ask them to change their review or add another paragraph to the review of how you handled the resolution. That's really, really important as well. I think those to me are the two big things that you need to do, and make sure you ask people to do that.
Or leave the negative review, but add a comment later saying, this follow-up, here's the end of the story, and this is what my experience was after my review.
Yeah. So, I actually like that better than having them change the original review, because I like the fact when you're transparent, you kind of show the way everything is. You guys having some network issues over there?
It may be on my end. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you leave a negative review, the owner responds to the review, and then later the original reviewer adds a comment about the way that things resolved themselves positively. that's a story, and we are, as human beings, we're wired for those sorts of stories. So to simply have somebody go back and change the review, you don't get the full arc of the story. You don't understand how things progressed. That's why I think it's important to leave the negative there as part of the tension that needs to be in the story in order for the positive result at the end of it to have more weight and be more impactful. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we're doing good. We're about 25 minutes in, and that's awesome. So hopefully you guys have gotten some out of this. And as always, Spark Live is released as a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Podvine, or your favorite player. And we're going to have fun next week. Do you know what it's about? Do you know?
Well, if we're going to have fun, then I have a feeling it's about artificial intelligence.
It is the role of artificial intelligence in personalizing customer experience. So the last thing I want to talk about before we go, talking about customer experience, let's talk about reviews and the role that AI can play in reviews. You want to talk about that in a minute?
Yeah, sure. We're actually seeing more and more stats that are showing that the responses that AI is creating in responding to both positive and negative reviews are very quality, that people are finding them useful and people are finding them to be, authentic. So that's good. I mean, it kind of feels a little bit weird to let AI answer all of your reviews. But it can do a really good job of making sure that you've got good coverage all the time. If you're running a larger corporate company and you're getting, we've got one HVAC company that 8 out of 10 people that they ask for a review actually leave them a review. If they had to respond to all of those, individually, that'd be almost a full-time job for somebody in their business, just because of the number of people that they see. So, having help and making sure, because here's what happens, right? We get overwhelmed, and so we start leaving generic responses. Mm-hmm. And those generic responses are just, thanks so much, appreciate it. Or, you guys, thumbs up, appreciate the feedback, or whatever. You're just like blazing through, just trying to keep up. But what people are really wanting is personalized, or human sounding, human responses. And AI is capable of doing that. So anyway, the interesting stat that we saw was that that the number of thumbs up for comments that get left on reviews as being helpful or not, that ones that are left by AI have more thumbs up than reviews or comments that are left by human beings. So that to me is like the real proof. If you have any questions at all about AI not being, able to be a human-centered technology, that dispels any notion of that completely, because people are actually reading those and going, "That's a great response. That's a good review."
And AI, learns who you are, how you work, all those things just through website communications, those kind of things. So it's real interesting. So we're going to get in to a lot more about artificial intelligence next week and personalizing the customer experience. I'm sure we'll talk about that again as a little portion of it. But yeah, it's all good. Thank you so much, Terry. Again, thanks for the thumbs up, along with Marie Brandy. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. And hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week and weekend. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.